Last week, we began introducing what we call the members of the essential crew. And we define as a crew the people that work behind the camera. And we dived into the functions of the writer, right? We began with the writer because the writer is an essential component of the crew, very essential, very important person. Today, we're going to be diving into the functions of what we call the producer. Guys, the job of the producer, depending on the type of producer you are, is very important and it's all encompassing. A film producer is generally involved with the production of a film from the beginning, from the very beginning. Maybe before everybody else is involved, a producer is already involved. The producer usually is the person that had the idea. I want to make a movie. I said usually, not always. Remember that. Nothing is written in stone. And there are many variations, right? I'm just putting out there what usually occurs. And what usually occurs is that the person that has the idea, the original idea of it, let's make a movie, is the producer. And this person may or might not work with the director in choosing a movie idea, as well as hiring everybody else that is part of the essential crew. That includes the script writer, the cast, and the rest of the crew. Producers are makers who must be focused on getting enough financing as well as on distributing the final film to the theater. So they are present at the beginning of the process and they are present at the end of the process from beginning to end. I think that if we could make an analogy between a crew of filmmakers and a family, it would be daddy. Usually, daddy is seen as the provider. I said usually, right? Typically, the one that brings the money home, the one that supplies to the biggest needs, the main responsibility in any household belongs to daddy. But the producer can be seen that way. They are daddy. Later on, I'm going to talk to you about who would mommy be, right? Because every household has me and daddy, and they both are supposed to fulfill certain roles. So uh, basically, the film producer makes the finished movie happen by sometimes by will, by sheer will of force. Um, they take care of all the details and all the problems that happen during film production, and they do it obviously behind the scenes. So producers are very powerful people. Usually, and I'm talking about the film industry, right? The producer is the first person to become involved in the project before a writer. Producers, you have like basically like two different focuses on production. You have the producer that focuses more on the deal. They're more like a businessman. They're the one that get the money. They're the one that get the people. They're the one that put everything in place for the movie to happen. They are not involved in the movie in a creative way, in an artistic way. Is that clear? They're more like businessmen. However, you have the type of producer that is the other side of the coin. You have another type of producer that is very much involved and very much in control of the creative and artistic aspects of filmmaking. And they shepherd the film from inception to completion. Okay, since it begins as an idea until it's finally done and it's being distributed. And you know what? Sometimes producers are involved with the movie years after the movie's been done because it doesn't end when the movie is done. Because once the movie is done, you have to get it out there for people to see, right? It's called distribution. We're going to be talking about that at the end of this course next semester, God willing. Okay. Any questions so far about what I have said about the producers? Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry. Repeat the question, please. That is an excellent question, sir. That's a very good question. In a perfect world, it will be that way. And there are certainly producers that, well, a producer has to be involved in both things. It's all a matter of preference, sir. Some producers enjoy more. It's like in any job. Um, what does your mom or dad do for a living, sir? Forgive me for asking the question. Okay, I'm sure that he loves horses, right? I'm sure that there are things that he loves about horses. On the other side, there are things that he hates about horses. Like a teacher, in my case, I I mean, we live in a world, right, that we have the good and the bad. It comes together, sir. And there are things I love about being a teacher. I love it. There are things I hate about being a teacher. And like anybody else, we try to do what we love and we try to avoid what we hate. You understand what I'm talking about? So, Mr. Roman, to answer your question, it depends on the producer. There are producers that enjoy more the deal, the business part. So they stick to that. And on the other side, there are producers that enjoy more the artistic, creative part. So they move more to that side. Does that make sense to you? Okay, all right. So, if you watch the credit rolls at the end of a movie, you know that there are many different kind of people involved in the production of a movie, and may have noted that many movies have more than a single producer. And as a matter of fact, you probably see you might see different kinds of producers. Okay, there's not just one kind of producer. Okay, movie production it's such a complicated process that sometimes you need different kinds of producers. Usually, uh, if there's one producer involved, that person is going to be called the executive producer. This one supervises and is assisted by other people that call themselves producers but take different responsibilities that are associated to that position because there are many responsibilities associated to that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to provide you with a list of the different kinds of producers that exist. All right, let's look at each one of them. Let's begin with the top dog, right? The top dog will be the executive producer. And there you have a picture of who I consider the most famous executive producer in Hollywood history. That would be George Lucas. I think you know that guy, right? And what does an executive producer? I mean, the word has executive. It sounds so important because it is an executive producer supervises other producers while they're performing their functions for the film or films. Because sometimes an executive producer is not in charge of one film but sometimes several films, especially nowadays when we have franchises. You understand the word franchise, right? No. Have you heard the term before? A franchise. For an example, when you have um, a series of movies, like for example, you have the Marvel movies, like the MCU. Well, that's a franchise. They have many movies, and they continue making movies that are part of that universe, right? Another one would be Lucasfilm has the Star Wars franchise, and they have movies that go to the theater, to the cinema. They have movies on TV. They have shows on TV. Like if you have Disney Plus, you see The Mandalorian. They have animated series like Clone Wars and stuff like that. So that's a franchise. You have Bloomhouse. Bloomhouse now today is the most famous horror movie franchise, and they put movies out there like The Conjuring and all these other kind of movies. And they're putting now movies on TV. If you have Amazon Prime, during the month of October, they had several movies from Blumhouse. So that is a franchise, okay? And usually that's where you see most executive producers nowadays. The executive producer might be also a studio executive. So they might also represent a studio. That means they might be a studio employee. They're not a freelancer. You might have some that are freelancers, but most likely they will be attached to a studio. Okay, and they are responsible for making sure that the movie is made within the budget. You know that the budget is the amount of money that you have to do something. Remember that when the movie was greenlit. Remember what we're talking about, right? When I say greenlit, you know what I'm talking about. The studio gave some money for that movie to be made. Who is in charge of making sure that money is used correctly? The producer. So that's a very serious position, right? You're dealing with sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, and you don't want your movie going over budget. That is something that the studios usually do not tolerate. Um, Sometimes this title may be given symbolically, which is a bit confusing. You're saying, wait a minute, this person has responsibilities, very serious one. But sometimes it's given symbolically to someone to give the movie visibility. There are people that are so famous that if you say that they are the executive producer, people might be interested in seeing the movie. Even if that person didn't spend a minute doing anything with the movie. Maybe they visited the set once. So that also happens in the industry. Making movies is a very strange business, guys. But uh, to simplify things, when you think about the executive producer, think in the head honcho. This is the guy that is responsible for making sure, more than anyone, that that movie is a done deal. Okay? Now, I said that I will be giving you a list of different types of producers. Other producers include the associate producer. An associate producer is like a junior producer because you have to begin somewhere, right? You begin at the bottom. And an associate producer, they handle certain aspects of production. Since a producer is supposed to do so many things, if you have an executive producer, what this executive producer is going to do, he's going to hire associate producers to do certain things. Okay, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that, you're in charge of this other thing. And usually the associate producer works on three stages of the production of a movie, which are pre-production, principal photography, and post-production, which is where the heavy lifting of a movie is done. These are the three most complicated stages of the movie. And sometimes the associate producer can the title can be given to someone who is a backer of the film that again has nothing to do with producing the film to give the film visibility. Oh, look, this person is an associate producer. Lady Gaga is the associate producer. It might be a good movie just because a lot of a movie's success depends on the marketing. And sometimes if you say if a certain person is associated to a movie, people might be interested because people are interested in seeing a movie for many different reasons. Sometimes reasons that have nothing to do with how good or not the movie really is. Another producer is the assistant producer. This is the most junior of the producers. This does anything that the associate producer said they have to do. This is who we call the gopher. Go for this, go for that. Anything they were like, for example, J Lo wants flowers in her in her in her room when she comes from the stage. Um, she wants flowers, they're roses, so make sure that she always has roses there whenever she comes back from shooting the movie. Stupid things like that. Okay, anything that, as ridiculous as it may sound, um, they're supposed to be doing. Okay, but it is a position where you learn a lot about making movies, being an associate producer. That's where you get like your training. You have the co-producer. Co-producer shares responsibility as a team. Sometimes you have not one or two producers, you have a team of producers, three or four, and you call them co-producers, and they share the works. Some can be more in charge of like creative aspects, and others can be more in charge of business functions like making the checks and things like that because people have to get paid. So that would be the co-producer. You have the supervising producer. This person is like the person that carry out the functions of the executive producer. When you have the type of producer that is very hands off, you have producers that they make the deal, they get the money, and then they sit back, and smoke a cigar. And that's all they do. And they have a supervising producer. Go and you're my minion. Go and check out, oversee the production and do the job I'm supposed to be doing. But that I'm not doing because I'm too busy, having power lunches with famous celebrities and smoking cigars. This happens too, right? So a supervising producer is a person with a lot of responsibilities, right? Almost like an executive producer, but without the the prestige and the salary. Coordinating producers are very much in vogue nowadays. You know that I was talking about franchises, and you know that sometimes in franchises they're making movies back to back, or maybe they're shooting them simultaneously. Example: how many of you have seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies? Do you like them? I like them. I mean, I love the first three. The last two, they're terrible. But the first three, I like them very much. I enjoyed the heck out of them. After they made the first one and it was so successful, they decided to make a franchise. They said, let's make more. So they shot one and two at the same time. So you're making two movies at the same time. In a situation like that, you need a coordinating producer. Someone that can be going back and forth between the shooting of two different movies. So in franchises, you're going to see a lot of coordinating producers. I'm sure that in the MCU, the Marvel movies, they have tons of coordinating producers because they're shooting movies right now. Even in the middle of the pandemic, they've been shooting. These guys put two or three movies and sometimes even four movies out there a year. And movies take a long time to make, and to put two or three or four movies out there per year, that is a lot. And to make sure that it all fits together, when you look at one movie and everything fits together so seamlessly, so perfectly, you need coordinating producers. Okay? You need people that can go back and forth and make sure that these movies are at the end, they look like a unified project, that they don't look like disparate and different. So that's the job of a coordinating producer. And finally, you have the line producer. This is the type of producer that I admire the most because the line producer is the one that handles the physical aspects of movie production. They are usually involved in the daily going ons in a movie, day in and day out. These are the guys that can get their hands dirty. If they have to like dig in and get a shovel and dig or whatever, they are there. These are the people that when there's a crisis, when there's a problem, they're the guys that solve it. So if I want a training as a producer, I would love to be a line producer. I think that would be like probably the best school for a producer, and I think that that's the position where you would, as a producer, where you will learn the most about the filmmaking process. Guys, any question about the producers? So as you can see, there are many kinds of producers. What are the typical tasks or duties of a producer during the filmmaking process? Well, you know, the filmmaking process begins with development and that is followed by pre production. What do they do there? Well, the producer finds the material that's going to become the movie story. They come up with the idea. I would like to make a movie about this. So they get the script. To get the script, they need to get someone who will write it. They look for the financing because without money, you cannot make a movie. Can work alone or work with the studio, and they find the director who's going to direct the film and the cinematographer who's going to shoot the film. And they help in the casting of the actors, the rest of the production team, and they help develop the shooting schedules, which is super important. Schedules are super important. So that's what usually what they do, which is a lot of very important work. During the shooting of the movie, which is known as principal photography or production, they monitor the production timetable. There's a timetable, guys. There's like, timetable is that this day, in this place, at this hour, we're supposed to have done this. And on paper, everything looks fantastic. In reality, that's a different story because there are many variables out there in life. So, uh, the producer is the one that monitors that production timetable to make sure that every day what is supposed to happen happens because the clock, as I told you, is ticking. Okay, and they also help maintain the movie in its original creative track. Okay, they might offer advice to the director depending on what type of director. If the director is a newbie, they're going to be breathing on the neck of this newbie. If it's a director that is respected and well known, and you as a producer have no business telling the director what to do, right? If you're like a Steven Spielberg, hands off, or a Martin Scorsese or a Christopher Nolan, you back off because those guys don't need your advice. They know what they're doing. So, and they usually, as I said, they act as a liaison between the crew, the production crew, and the studio. Once the movie is shot, we move into post production, and during post production, they are the ones that are reviewing the editing process. The editing process, when you take all that footage and it starts becoming a movie, they supervise that process and they might offer suggestions. Suggestions might come from the studio because remember, the studio is the ultimate customer. They paid for the movie at the end of the day. And at the end, the final process was, which is distribution. They are the one that secure distribution, and they review the advertisement campaign, which are the trailers and the posters and all that, those things. Okay, to make sure that the movies get to you and me, so we can see it and enjoy it. Okay, so as you can see, a producer is involved during the entire process. How many of you have ever seen the Oscars or the Academy Awards show? Okay, you have. You know that the final Oscar that they give, the most important Oscar, goes to Best Film of the Year. When they give that Oscar, who's the person they call to come up and get that Oscar? Of all the people that are involved in the process of making a film, who's the one that goes up there to get that Oscar? Anybody? Why? Exactly. Exactly. The producer, as you can see in that picture, right? For Argo, the producers were um, Ben Affleck and George Clooney. George Clooney did nothing, but since George Clooney is so famous, so let's put the name of producer, so the movie can get more prestige. And Argo won a few years ago won the Academy Award for Best Film of the Year. It was directed and produced and also starred by Ben Affleck because Ben Affleck is like a movies actor. He is a very good director and he's also a producer. So he was up there too, getting his Oscar, right? So that's why that Oscar goes to the producer. That's the person that spends the most time, usually, with the movie, guys. So in our plane of reality, as a producer, if you're a producer, You must be highly self-motivated. So nobody can be going after you, telling you, oh, reminding you you have to do this and do that. A producer does not have to be reminded of anything because they are self-motivated people. They don't need to be told what to do because they know what they have to do, and you can be sure they will be doing it. Okay, so if you're that person, if you're a producer, you are the person that has to make it happen, and you're pressuring other people to make it happen. A producer usually needs an entourage that consists of an associate producer, an associate director, a camera operator, and a sound engineer. Those are the people that usually hang out with a producer, right? And with this team of people, hopefully you will stay in budget. You will scout for locations. You'll schedule the shoot. You'll get props and costumes and feed the cast and crew. Remember that when you're making movies, you have to feed people too. People eat. Okay, that's something that people don't think about when they think about movies. But yeah, that's important too. So, guys, that's all I have for you today. Those are the duties of the producer. Those are the types of producer. Don't forget that you're not supposed to do any seat work today. Seat work will be uploaded next week when we cover the other half of this lesson. So, I bid you guys farewell. I'll be seeing you, God willing, in a couple of days. Take care.